Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Naranam Namaskritya Naram Cha Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtiprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. Text number 46 onwards. Now chet pramattam asad indriya vajisuta nitot patham vishaya dasyushu nikshipanti te dasyavaha sahasutam amam tamo andhe sansar ku uru mrityu bhay kshipanti. Otherwise, if one does not take shelter of Achyut and Baldev, then the senses, acting as the horses, and the intelligence, acting as a driver, both being prone to material contamination, inattentively bring the body, which acts as a chariot, to the path of sense gratification. When one is thus attracted again by the rogues of Vishay, eating, sleeping, and mating, the horses and the chariot driver are thrown into the blinding dark well of material existence, and one is again put into a dangerous and extremely fearful situation of repeated birth and death. So to control the senses, we have to take shelter of Rishikesha, who's a controller, who's a lord of the senses. Otherwise, it's not at all possible. Without the protection of Gauranitai, Krishna Balram, one cannot get out of the dark well of ignorance in material existence. This is indicated here by the word na uchet, which means that one will always remain in the dark well of material existence. The living entity must get strength from Gaur Nitai Gaur or Krishna Balram. Without the mercy of Nitai Gaur, there is no way to come out of this dark well of ignorance. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Gaudaday Pushpavanto Chitro Shando Tamonado. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. This material world is a dark well of ignorance. The fallen soul in this dark well must take shelter of the lotus feet of God Nitai, for thus he can easily emerge from material existence. Without their strength, simply attempting to get out of the clutches of matter by speculative knowledge will be insufficient. So without taking shelter of Prabhupada says, Gaur Nitai or Krishna Balram, Radha Krishna, Jagannath, it's just extremely difficult. And taking shelter is what? Taking shelter means engaging our senses in their service. Then there are chances. Then there's a chance that senses will not go haywire. Senses will not go here and there and then create more bondage and more chances of birth and death. And then Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So that is bhakti. Using the Rishikena means the senses, in the service of Rishikesha, Lord of the senses. Otherwise, it's just not possible. Pravrittam cha nivrittam cha dvividham karma vedikam avartate pravrittena nivrittena shrute amritam. According to the Vedas, there are two kinds of activities, pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti activities involve raising oneself from a lower to a higher condition of materialistic life, whereas nivritti means the cessation of material desire. Though through pravritti activities one suffers from material entanglement, but by nivritti activities one is purified and becomes fit to enjoy eternal blissful life. So pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti means to involve, raising oneself from lower to higher condition of materialistic life, not spiritual. But nivritti means the cessation of material desire. So by nivritti only one can. So nivritti means basically austerity. Doing austerity now, which feels like poisonous in the beginning, but end is always sweet, nectarian. On the other hand, pravritti marg, which sounds very nice, very sweet, very tasty in the beginning, but the end is always poisonous because pravritti means engaging more and more in material activities. So means more and more birth with the material body, and material body does not give pleasure. It only gives pain. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, pravrittim cha nivrittim ja janana vidurasura. The asuras, non-devotees, cannot distinguish between pravritti and nivritti. Whatever they like, they do. Such persons think themselves independent of the strong material nature, and therefore they are irresponsible and do not care to act piously. Indeed, they do not distinguish between pious and impious activity. Bhakti, of course, does not depend on pious or impious activity. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Sarve Punsam Paro Dharma. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. Nonetheless, those who act piously have a better chance to become devotees. So to act impiously, it's very difficult to become a devotee. But when somebody acts piously in the mode of goodness, then chances are he can come to the level of devotional service. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna. O Arjun, 4 kinds of pious men render devotional service unto me. One who takes to devotional service, even with some material motive, is considered pious. And because he has come to Krishna, he will gradually come to the stage of bhakti. Then, like Dhruv Maharaj, he will refuse to accept any material benediction from the Lord. Swamin Kritartho Asmin Varam Nayachu. Therefore, even if one is materially inclined, one may take to the shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram or Gauranitai, so that he will very soon be purified of all material desires. As soon as one is freed from inclinations towards pious and impious activities, he becomes a perfect candidate for returning home back to Godhead. So this is all that is required, that is Narad Muni is saying again and again, engage everything, engage yourself in the devotional service, devotional activities. Hisram dravimayam kamyam agni hotradya shantidam darshascha purnamasascha chaturmasyam pashu sutaha. Etadishtam pravrittakhyam hutam prahutam evacha purtam suralaya rama kupa jivyadi lakshanam. The ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices known as Agnihotra Yagya, Darsha Yagya, Purnamas Yagya, Chaturmasya Yagya, Pashu Yagya, and Som Yagya are all symptomized by the killing of animals and the burning of many valuables, especially food grains, all for the fulfillment of material desires and the creation of anxiety. Performing such sacrifices, worshipping Vashvadeva, and performing the ceremony of Balihara, which all supposedly constitute the goal of life, as well as constructing temples for demigods, building resting houses and gardens, digging wells for the distribution of water, establishing booths for the distribution of food, and performing activities for public welfare. These are all symptomized by attachment to material desires. Hmm. Although they all sound wonderful activities, but all attachment to material desires was trying to fulfill material desires. Because in the end, there'll be some material benedictions or material results, good results. Even can go to heavenly planets. But again, it's all material sense gratification in the end. Heavenly planets means unlimited and wonderful material sense gratification. But devotee is not concerned with all this. Dravya sukshma vipakascha dhumo ratri vipakshaya ayanam dakshinam somo darsha oshadhi virutha annamaret iti kshameksha pitriyanam punarbhava ekakashenana purvam bhutva bhutveha jayate. My dear King Yudhishthir, when oblations of ghee and food grains like barley and sesame are offered in sacrifice, they turn into celestial smoke, which carries one to successively higher planetary systems like the kingdoms of Dhuma, Ratri, Krishna Paksha, Dakshinam, and ultimately the moon. Then, however, the performers of sacrifice descend again to earth to become herbs, creepers, vegetables, and food grains. These are eaten by different living entities and then turned to semen, which is injected into female bodies. Thus, one takes birth again and again and again and again. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Te tam bhaktva svarga lokam vishalam, shine punya marte lokam vishanti. When those who follow the Pravritti mark have enjoyed heavenly sense pleasure, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, through the Vedic principles, they achieve only flickering happiness. Following the Pravritti mark, the living entity who desires to be promoted to the higher planetary systems performs sacrifices regularly, and how he goes up and comes down again is described here in Srimad Bhagavatam as well as in Bhagavad Gita. It is also said Traigunya Veshya Veda. The Vedas deal mainly with the three modes of material nature. The Vedas, especially three Vedas, namely Sama, Yajur, and Rik, vividly describe this process of ascending to the higher planets and returning. But Krishna advises Arjuna, Traigunya Vishya Veda. One has to transcend these three modes of material nature, and then one will be released from the cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, although one may be promoted to a higher planetary system, such as Chandraloka, one must again come down. After one's enjoyment due to pious activities is finished, one must return to this planet in rainfall and first take birth as a plant or creeper, which is eaten by various animals, including human beings, and turn to semen. This semen is injected into the female body, and thus the living entity takes birth. Those who return to earth in this way take birth, especially in higher families, like those of the Brahmins. So as I had explained this earlier, that when a living entity goes to heavenly planet, so in the heaven, they all are enjoying, everybody's enjoying, drinking somras and watching apsaras dancing and so many different things going on. But all of a sudden, Shine Punya, his bank balance of highest activities are over. So as soon as his highest activities bank balance is over, he is taken out of that assembly. Others are still enjoying, their bank balance is still there. So this living entity is kicked out. And when he is kicked out of the heavenly planets, then he cries. He cries and cries and cries because he wants to enjoy with his buddies in the heavenly planet. But no, he's out. And also outside heavenly planets are those demons. And they see this poor soul coming out and they beat him up. So then he cries more. And as Prabhupada explains here, with the rainfall, these living entities fall down on earth. So it goes into the soil and then it takes birth in as a plant or a creeper first. And whoever eats that plant, if the animal eats, then the living entity gets the animal body. If a human being eats, it gets a human body. And Prabhupada explains, those who return to earth in this way take birth, especially in higher families like those of Brahmins, because they're coming down from the heavenly planets. And there are other ways of taking birth also, those who get recycled here only. But now those who take birth as animals, so it is possible they take birth as animals, but taken care of by Brahminical families. But then again, a person can go up, remain as a human being. He can remain at that place or go down. So, but this is all temporary. There's nothing permanent in all this. So Pravritti Marg, it only engages us in temporary activities. It might feel nice for some time, but then again, it's pain, it's problem, it's misery. So why do it? That's what Narad Muni is saying. Now, why get involved in all this? And Prabhupada says, it may be remarked in this connection that even the modern so-called scientists who are going to the moon are not able to stay there, but are returning to their labs. Therefore, whether one goes to the moon by modern mechanical arrangements or by performing pious activities, one must return to earth. That is clearly stated in this verse and explained in Bhagavad Gita. Even if one goes to higher planetary systems, one's place there is not secure. One must return to Martya Loka. Abram Bhuvana Loka Punaravartino Arjuna. Aside from the moon, even if one goes to Brahma Loka, one must return. Yam prapyana nivartante tadham paramo. But if one goes back home, back to Godhead, he need not return to this material world. Now, this is a guarantee by Krishna. He is giving this guarantee. Even if you go to Brahma Loka, Chandra Loka, Surya Loka, any other heavenly planet, you have to come back to earth. But if you come back to my abode, spiritual world, you don't need to return. So going to the spiritual world, performing bhakti, much easier than performing all these different yagyas and pious activities. And the result of all these yagya pious activities, only one goes to heavenly planets for a few years and then comes back again to suffer. So comparatively, few years of bhakti, one gets a chance to go back to the spiritual world from which it doesn't have to return again, ever. It's an eternal position. So that is why bhakti is more powerful and it gives better results. Nishekadisham shanante sanskara sanskrito dvijaha indriyeshu kriya yagyan jnana deepeshu juhvati. A twice-born Brahman, Dvija, gains his life by the grace of his parents through the process of purification known as Garbhada. There are also other processes of purification until the end of life, when the funeral ceremony, Antyeshti Kriya, is performed. Thus, in due course, a qualified Brahman becomes uninterested in materialistic activities and sacrifices, but he offers essential sacrifices in full knowledge into the working senses, which are illuminated by the fire of knowledge. So those interested in materialistic activities remain in the cycle of birth and death, pravritti marg, or the inclination to stay in the material world, to enjoy varieties of sense gratification, has been explained in the previous verse. Now in this verse, it is explained that one who has perfect Brahminical knowledge rejects the process of elevation to higher planets and accepts nivritti marg. In other words, he prepares himself to go back to Godhead. Those who are not Brahmins but atheists do not know what is pravritti marg or nivritti marg. They simply want to obtain pleasure at any cost. Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore training devotees to give up the pravritti marg and accept the nivritti marg in order to return home back to Godhead. This is a little difficult to understand, but it is very easy if one takes to Krishna consciousness seriously and tries to understand Krishna. A Krishna conscious person can understand that performing yajna according to the karma kanda system is a useless waste of time, and that merely giving up the karma kanda and accepting the process of speculation or jnana kanda is also unfruitful. Therefore, Narottam Das Thakur has sung in his Prema Bhakti Chandrika, Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishera Bhand. A life of Karma Kanda or Jnana Kanda is like a poison pot, and one who takes to such a life is doomed. In the Karma Kanda system, one is destined to accept birth and death again and again. Similarly, with Jnana Kanda, one falls down again to this material world. Only worship of the Supreme Person offers one the safety of going back home, back to Godhead. So bhakti process is the only process that is safe, completely safe. And not just that, even if one doesn't complete one's bhakti this lifetime, one starts from the same point where he has left in the next lifetime. There is no diminution, there is no loss. And if one makes little progress, then he gets to take birth in a very reputed or aristocratic family. He can be very intelligent, beautiful, charming, or whatever. He gets those opulences. At the same time, he gets to engage in bhakti process again. And if one leaves this body by making more progress, higher progress, then he gets to take birth in a Vaishnava family, where he can start off his bhakti from the very beginning, from the very little age of his life. So bhakti process in every way, it is beneficial. But if one does plenty of karma kanda yajnas, he is not going to get the benefit next life. That you start from wherever you left off. Karma kanda yajna, he gets a benefit, goes to heavenly planets, enjoys, comes back, starts from scratch. And that's why Narottam Das Thakur said, Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishera Bhat. Vishera means it's just poison. We don't understand it right now. But those who have understood, and that's why in the shloka it is said, he offers essential sacrifices and full knowledge into the working senses, which are illuminated by the fire of knowledge. Because then he understands. It's just not worth it. Indriyani manasyurmo vachi vekarikam manaha vacham varna samamnae tam omkare sware nyase. Omkaram bindo nade tam tam tu prane mahatyumam. The mind is always agitated by the waves of acceptance and rejection. Therefore, all the activities of the senses should be offered into the mind, which should be offered into one's words. Then one's words should be offered into the aggregate of all alphabets, which should be offered into the concise form, Omkar. Omkar should be offered into the point, Bindu. Bindu into the vibration of sound, and that vibration into the life air. Then the living entity, who is all that remains, should be placed in Brahman, the Supreme. This is a process of sacrifice. Sounds a little difficult, but in Kali Yuga, everything is boiled down to chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That's it. Purport. The mind is always agitated by acceptance and rejection, which are compared to mental waves that are constantly tossing. The living entity is floating in the waves of material existence because of his forgetfulness. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore sung in his Gitavali, Miche Maya Ravashe, Yacha Bheshe Kacha Habu Dubu Pai. My dear mind, under the influence of Maya, you are being carried away by the waves of rejection and acceptance. So what is rejection and acceptance? So what happens in the material world, anything we like, suppose anything material, suppose we like to eat something nice, some gulab jamun. So mind likes it, accepts it. But after eating 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, I think 10 is too much, one mind rejects it. No, no more. It's boring. I need something new, something better. So give me rasgulla. So after he eats rasgulla for a while, he rejects it. But this is what mind does. We like something for a little while and then reject it. We want something new, something new, something new. But this is a material world. A spiritual world, it's the same thing, but it's always new. And so it's always relishable. So this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says. Simply take shelter of Krishna. Jeev Krishna Das. Ei Vishwas Karleta Ar Dukhanai. If we simply regard the lotus feet of Krishna as our ultimate shelter, we shall be saved from all these waves of Maya, which are variously exhibited as mental and sensual activities, and the agitation of rejection and acceptance. Krishna instructs in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmana Pratyate. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. Therefore, if we simply place ourselves at the lotus feet of Krishna by taking to Krishna consciousness and keeping always in touch with him by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we need not take much trouble in arranging to return to the spiritual world. By the mercy of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is very easy. Hare Ranam, Hare Ranam, Hare Ranam Eva Kevalam. See, it's such an easy process given by Mahaprabhu, and with his mercy, with the mercy of Lord Nityananda also, one can control the mind, control the senses, sharpen the intelligence, enjoy life here, and then come back to Godhead after leaving the body. So it's just a win-win situation in Bhakti Yoga. Okay, so I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, this particular chapter, we are able to understand that this is about how a civilized society should be. Similarly, there is one Veda called Samaveda, where Lord talks about how you can defend yourself or how you can live your life on this earth by all the challenges which comes to you, how you tackle those challenges. That was given in Samaveda. So just trying to understand is this which is more elaborated, is this one or Samaveda, whatever is given.
About Vedas, I only know four, right? Yajur,
There's one
Athar, and
called
Sam. But I myself have never read Vedas. I only read Prabhupada's books. So, and what Bhagavad Gita says, Vedas mainly deal with the three modes of material nature. So, how to be in this material world, but do the right things, do yajna and this and that. But Bhagavatam takes us beyond that. Go beyond. Krishna himself says in Gita, go beyond the Vedic instructions. We are not saying Vedas are not good. Vedas are very good. But there's something beyond.
First of all, this all four Vedas come from the mouth of Narayana itself. Whereas this is also is the fact that Srimad Bhagavatam is the what we call that it's culmination or the extract of everything. We call it Ved or Puran, everything. So if somebody reads Srimad Bhagavatam thoroughly and imbibe it, then I think it's just he has all the knowledge. He gains.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's nothing lacking in Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything is there.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so we'll stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhu.